and some that are specifically designed to help small non-traditional companies. So one of the ones that's most popular in the sense that it is relatively easy to navigate, although it is relatively small to start, is what's called the Small Business Innovative Research Program, or SBIR. Every agency that spends more than $100 million in research and development has to do SBIR programs. Some of them do more than others. Obviously, the Department of Defense is a very big player in it, Homeland Security, NASA, et cetera. But these are, they're phased agreements. You typically get $100,000 or $150,000 for a concept up front, and then it grows to maybe a couple $1 million. They're not big dollars, but they are a path into the market that can turn very, very significant value in the back end. And they are typically devoid of most of the federal acquisition rules and regulations that so bollocks up the normal system. One thing about the government acquisition process, it is not equitable. If you're a government contractor and that's all you do, you have a much harder time than companies coming in from the outside, in a sense, in terms of the burdens placed on you. On the other hand, getting in is harder, obviously, because it is a somewhat of an insular market. So you have SBIR, and there's a companion program called the Small Business Tech Transfer, an STTR, which has slightly similar rules. And I think the big difference is there that the small companies have to be partnered with an academic institution. So there's that. Another key program getting in is called Other Transactions Authority. It's not a program, it's actually an authority that the Department of Defense and Department of Homeland Security and HHS are using extensively. And I say extensively, we're looking this year probably with the COVID spend $7 or $8 billion, which is a lot in an R&D environment. And that basically allows the government to enter into a contract with a non-traditional provider. Doesn't have to be small. It's a company that is not a normal, does not have a large percentage of business with the government and is bringing something new to the table. And the contracts are completely outside the realm of the federal acquisition regulation. So they're basically commercial contracts in theory. There's some controversy about them because people haven't really looked into details of what they look like. In fact, I'm part of a study, we're doing that now. But that's also, if you're in, for instance, on the West Coast and you have defense-related capabilities, one of your best avenues in would be the Defense Innovation Unit. They're masters at using other transactions. The Department of Homeland Security has an office now in Silicon Valley. They're also both in Austin, Texas. So the agencies have spread out and they're trying to reach out and find those capabilities. And to some extent, while they don't match make, they will help. I've had 2 cases with the Defense Innovation Unit where they thought a capability would actually match a customer need that they already knew about. And they proactively reached out to get that capability to come and talk to them. So those are a few of the ways that get in. The government does have very significant requirements for what percentage of spend must go to small businesses, must go to women-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, and so forth. But depending on where you are in the developmental spectrum in terms of your capability, there are various paths in. Katie, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go on and on like that, because this is an area I know you're working a lot with government.
No, not at all. I think those are all great options. The other hat that I wear, I run GovMates, which is a teaming partner platform for government contractors. So I am a huge fan and advocate for teaming and collaboration in the federal contracting space. No one firm can do everything. And a lot of these large systems integrators and defense primes do need subcontractors. They need teaming partners in order to support the mission, in order to execute. So part of the way to kind of dip your toe in the federal contracting space is to identify either those traditional defense primes or the systems integrators whose capabilities align with yours. One thing to note is, you know, when speaking with potential teaming partners, don't be a jack of all trades. Focus on the 1 or 2 things that you do really well. No one wants to know that you do program management and janitorial services. It's, you know, one or the other. That's your area of expertise. But really how you develop that past performance is through subcontracting. I know there's a lot to be said about duking it out with the big guys, getting work share, all that kind of stuff. But subcontracting is a good way to develop past performance. At GovMates, we've built a platform where it's free for any small business to join. We simply collect information on your company, your capabilities, your customer past performance, contract vehicles, NAICS codes, clearances, all that kind of stuff. After which then you're eligible for teaming and procurement introductions. On the flip side, we'll get calls from the Boeings, Lockheed's, SAICs of the world, as well as government agencies seeking small businesses with certain capabilities. So for GovMates, we've been around coming up on 5 years now. We have nearly 25,000 matches under our belt, over 4,000 teaming introductions. So I can say teaming and collaboration in the federal space is real. There is truly a demand to find teaming partners. And to be clear, it's not always from the large integrators and primes. It can also be from other small businesses or maybe mid-tiers who have graduated from, say, the 8A program, who are looking for a good partner. One great example in the VA, there's a large contract vehicle called Vector. And when they first competed out that vehicle, there was, I want to say, 6 or 8 functional categories. They ended up narrowing it down to, I think, 5. But given the diversity of categories on that vehicle, no one firm could actually take that on. So everyone who pursued Vector was forced to team with other small businesses. So teaming, I think, is a great way into the federal space. And you're not just forced to team with the big boys, but it can also be other small businesses as well.
Katie, can I just, before you go on to the financing piece, because I just want to foot stomp what you just said, because I totally agree with you that there are some capabilities that stand alone when you bring them into the marketplace. And the government is increasingly thinking incrementally or agilely about its programmatic needs. And so that opens doors to individual pieces. But the opportunity to team with an entity, and I happen to be a big fan of looking at the smaller and mid-tier firms rather than the very large guys, because they tend to be much easier to do business with, and just much more agile, just organizationally and in a management sense. You need to have a partner in many cases that has real domain expertise. And I don't mean political domain. And I'll just give you one quick example. You probably heard several years ago when the VA had this huge scandal about 800,000 veterans who couldn't get appointments for months and months and months. And there was a company that actually has a commercial product, I won't mention them because they're still out in the marketplace, that actually could have helped towards that. But we encouraged them like crazy to partner with one of the larger companies to point out to them that the VA is unlike any other health system in the world. There's nothing comparable to it in terms of its complexity and so forth. No, we're going to do it on our own. We're going to do it on our own. We're doing it for, this hospital system and that hospital system, and they didn't get anywhere. And the reason is because from an engineering perspective, from a technical perspective, is so complex. So what I've heard a lot from companies, particularly in the Valley, is they hear a lot from the large integrators, but they don't speak the same language, and it's very hard actually to find common ground. To Katie's point, there are partners out there who are getting very smart about this, realize that the customer is going to demand that they go out and find new capability and not build and own everything. And then there are lots of small and mid-tier firms who, because of the nature of technology today, you can have a much bigger impact than you used to be able to 5 years ago or 10 years ago, where you really required a huge solution and integration to come to bear. So I don't mean to take time away from you, Katie, but I think that's really important, the point you were making.
No, and I think, and again, I think everyone on this call essentially qualifies as a non-traditional defense contractor. Stan, to your point with OTAs being a great tool, DoD leverages those heavily. And there is a huge emphasis on finding those really innovative, cutting-edge technologies in support of the mission. They are actively seeking out folks who aren't, typically the Beltway bandits, if you will. Those folks are in DC, but they're looking to Silicon Valley and Austin to find those really innovative pieces of tech.